and it's a public hospital. I'm like, I think I'm ready to have another baby. Hi everyone, and welcome to another video on my channel. My name is Busi, and this is a space where I talk all things life abroad as a South African living in Canada, as well as self-care. On today's video, I am talking about the advantages of moving to Canada. I'm going to be mentioning 6 things that were the biggest highlight for me and things that I consider advantages and really good things for moving to Canada. And if you are looking to move to Canada and you're wondering what are some of the benefits or some of the really great, awesome things that I could potentially be looking forward to, this video is for you. And I'm in no way saying, every single little thing is 100% perfect. Every single place on this earth, I think, has its things. But these 6 things that I'm going to be highlighting today, and there's a whole lot more, but the 6 that I'm highlighting today are really at the top of my list. So number 1 at the top of my list is safety. Safety is so high here in Canada. Something that really took a very long time for me to get used to is not having any fence around my house. So there's no fence around the house that we live. There's literally no barrier between the street, you walking past the street, or a car driving past the street to the front door of our house. And the front door of our house is literally like, it has glass on it, and you'll put something over it so people are not just seeing you directly when you're inside the house. But a huge portion of our front door is glass, and there's no barrier, there's nothing, no fence, there's no burglar doors, there's nothing between us and the street. It's the craziest thing. But safety is super high. It's something that I really love and is the biggest benefit and advantage. Number 2 is the schooling system. The public schooling system in Canada is really good, and it's funded by taxpayers. We can't really say it's free because people do work and pay tax. We work, we pay tax, and school is free because it's funded by the taxpayers' money. When we were back in South Africa, my oldest was in grade R, and he was in a private school. He was in a private school doing grade R, and when we moved to Canada, he started grade 1 here in Canada. And I'm telling you, the way that the school even looks like from a facilities perspective, it's right up there with the private schools in South Africa, not the public schools, the private schools in South Africa. It's right up there, and the education system is really good. And the fact that we don't have to spend an arm and a leg on top of paying tax and all of the other things that money has to go towards, it's a really big advantage. I went through the public schooling system, and I mean, it works. It works to a certain extent, but there's a lot of things that also just don't work, and you have to put in so much extra effort just to get the bare minimums of certain things. In South Africa, even if you are in a public school, there's still some school fees that you have to pay. You still have to pay school fees. And here, it's not like that. Public school is fully funded by taxpayers, and you don't have to pay anything as a parent. And the level of education is really high as well. If you have kids or you plan to have kids, I think it's a really great place to come and raise your babies. So number 3 at the top of my list is services. I'm talking water, electricity, heat, like all of the things, the basic services that you need just to live, just to get by in this day and age. And looking back at times where I lived in South Africa and I had to be working from home, as an example, I never knew when electricity would just decide to go away. And it was very costly. It was very costly to try keep up paying data. Here in Canada, I will tell you, we have only had power cuts, I think 2 times. We've only had power cuts 2 times, and that is in this new house that we're staying in. And it is because there's houses that are still being built around us, and our line got interrupted through whatever else is happening around us. But it was sorted out literally within like 2 hours. Those 2 times, 2 or 3 times, I can't remember, I think it's 2 times, where we had that power interruption are the only times that we've ever had power cuts. Ever had power cuts since we've lived in Canada, and we've been here for a bit over 2 years now. Those are the only 2 times we've had power cuts, and those power cuts were sorted out in the quickest time ever. We've never not had running water in the house ever since we've stayed here. Everything works when you're expecting it to work, when you need it to be working, it works. And I think in a nutshell, basically, your tax money works for you. You pay tax, you work, you pay tax, and you see where the money is going. I think that's the biggest thing, whether it's from a schooling perspective, it's from a services perspective, it's from a safety perspective. Your money does work for you. And that leads me to my number 4 point. My number 4 is healthcare. Healthcare, basic healthcare here in Canada, and I've mentioned this in videos previously, is also funded by taxpayers' money. So you don't have to be paying high amounts on medical aid just for really basic things. And I will tell you again, the public hospitals here, oh my gosh, they're so different to the private hospitals in South Africa. It's crazy. Once I had to take my oldest to the hospital. He was throwing up at school and he just couldn't keep anything down. We took him to the physician, so a general practitioner, what you'd call a general practitioner in South Africa. And they had to write him a letter that he needs to go and get more tests done at the hospital. And that was the first time I actually went inside a hospital. I've always just driven past, and they look pretty decent even on the outside. But the inside of that hospital, I was like, I have been in a number of private hospitals in South Africa, and I've never seen not one of them look the way that hospital looked. And it's a public hospital. I'm like, I think I'm ready to have another baby. But yes, the hospitals here look really great, and the basic healthcare is covered. So your tax money really works for you. And that leads me to number 5. Number 5 is the public transport. Public transport here is also really good public transport. It depends also, I'd say, where you live, how you have the bus stops set up, because I've heard of people saying they have to walk maybe, I don't know, 20 minutes before, or even more than 20 minutes before they reach a bus stop if they need to be using public transport. So on that point, I would say, if you know that you're not going to be buying a car very soon, if you're moving to Canada, make sure that wherever you're deciding to stay, there's a bus stop very close to that house. Just make sure that it's something that you check. For me personally, I was not very far from a bus stop. Like literally the bus stop from my house, the previous house that we stayed in when I was using public transport, it was probably like a 2-minute walk for me. It was a 2-minute walk. And there's a time where I've used the buses. So I've used the buses to get around, go to work. And that was when I was working in Mississauga for a company that was in Mississauga. And when I worked in Toronto, I had a car then, but I still used the public transport. So I used the GO train, which is similar to the GO train in South Africa. And the reason for that is that traffic is just too crazy in downtown Toronto. It's so crazy. It does not make sense to drive to the office. I drove to the office once and I was like, not doing that again. So it just makes sense to go park your car at the GO station, park your car, and then go and ride the GO train. Or if you're living next to an area that has a bus, park and ride type of vibe, you park there, take the bus, go to the GO station, and then go to wherever you need to be going downtown Toronto, if you are living in one of the neighboring towns like I am. So that is another super big advantage and benefit, according to me, because having lived in South Africa, oh my word, thinking about using the public transportation system to get around. I mean, it's something that you would do if you really have to do it. But I've found that there's a lot of people who will just prefer to Uber to places or use Taxify instead of using the traditional taxis that exist in South Africa. Because, yeah, I've used taxis for a very long time in South Africa, growing up, going to school from primary school all the way to high school, and for a short period during my university days, I was using taxis. And yeah, it's not the greatest of systems to be moving around, but you use what you have, right? So if you would need to use public transport to get to work, to get maybe to wherever it is that you need to be getting, it is really, really good. It's really good. And I would just advise that wherever it is that you end up looking to live, just make sure if you're gonna have to use public transport that you have a bus stop very close to wherever your house is. Number 6, saving the best for last. Well, all of them are best, really. Like, it's all very important things that are very high on my list of important things if I'm living in a place, that just make that experience that much nicer. But in Canada, if you have lived in Canada for 3 years, you can apply for citizenship. If you've lived and you have your permanent residence, you can then apply for citizenship after just 3 years of living in Canada. Like, how many countries can you say you can do that around the world? Some countries you can live there. I know people who've stayed in certain parts of the world where they have been there for like 12 years. There's one couple, they have a 9-year-old who was born in that country, but they will never be able to get citizenship there. If they would stop working, if they'd ever, for whatever reason, not have jobs, they would literally have to pack up and move back to South Africa. And I'm just like, this poor child who's only ever known life in this country is not even recognized by that country as one of the country's own. It's the craziest thing. But that's one of the benefits in Canada. If it is something that you're looking for, you can apply for citizenship after 3 years of staying in the country if you have permanent residence. And if you're wondering what the process might look like, or what process I followed, me and my family followed, if this is the first video that you're watching on my channel, I do have a video on my channel where I talk about the immigration process that we followed, and you can check that video out if that's something that you would like to know. Let me know in the comments section if there's any advantage that jumped up at you. Let me know if there's something else that you would like to know that is very important to you for moving to another country, and I will gladly consider making a video about it if it's something that I can speak on. I look forward to hearing from you, and I will see you on the next video.
Thank you for watching.
20 minutes. Oh, I need a thumbnail for this. What is this now? Advantages of moving to Canada. Thumbnail ideas. Maybe like chilling, like, let's come closer and chill like